Imagine the most connected world ever built, cities of gold, ships crossing every sea. Then, in one lifetime, silence. It is 1200 BC. The ancient world is at its peak. Palaces rise. Trade routes stretch from Egypt to Babylon. Everything works. Then something happens. Something so total, so complete, that 12 civilizations fall. Not one, not two, 12, all at once. The Hittite Empire, gone. Mycenaean Greece, gone. Ugarit, Cyprus, the Levantine cities, gone. Wiped from history in decades. Egypt survives, but barely. Wounded, diminished. Never again the power it once was. The ancient world dies, and nobody knows why. What destroyed the most advanced civilization network humanity had ever built? Was it war? Climate? Famine? Or something far more terrifying? What if the answer is a warning? What if the Bronze Age collapse is not just ancient history, but a mirror held up to our world today? Stay with us, because what you're about to discover will change how you see civilization itself. This is the greatest mystery in all of ancient history. If you love uncovering the secrets history never taught you, subscribe now. New discoveries, ancient mysteries, every single week. Chapter 1: The World Before the Fall. To understand the collapse, you must first understand what was lost. The Bronze Age world was extraordinary, impossibly advanced for its time. By 1300 BC, the Mediterranean was one vast trading network. Copper from Cyprus, tin from Afghanistan, grain from Egypt, glass from Syria. Ships carried luxury goods across open water with precision. Merchants spoke multiple languages. Diplomats wrote letters between kings as equals. The Hittites controlled Anatolia, modern Turkey. Their ironworking technology was centuries ahead of everyone else. Their armies were feared across the known world. Mycenaean Greece built massive stone palace complexes. The walls of Mycenae were so huge that later Greeks believed giants had built them. The city of Ugarit on the Syrian coast was the trading capital of the ancient world. Every language, every culture passed through its harbor gates. Egypt under Ramesses the Great was the wealthiest nation on earth. Its temples stretched for miles. Its armies had no equal in Africa or the Levant. This was a globalized world. Not like ours, but shockingly similar, connected, interdependent, complex, and therefore shockingly fragile. Archaeologists call this the Late Bronze Age, a period of roughly 3 centuries where human civilization reached its first true peak of interconnection. And then, between approximately 1200 and 1150 BC, it all ends. Every single palace, every major city, every trade network, destroyed or abandoned. Chapter 2: The Evidence of Destruction. Archaeologists have excavated dozens of late Bronze Age sites. What they find at the destruction layers is always the same, and always terrifying. Burned buildings, smashed pottery, skeletons with arrowheads still lodged in their bones, grain stores set on fire, warehouses looted and left empty. At Ugarit, excavators found a clay tablet still in the kiln, a letter that was never sent. It reads, "The enemy ships are here. They are attacking us. Save us." Nobody came. Ugarit burned. It was never rebuilt. The city that had stood for over 1,000 years simply ceased to exist after 1185 BC. At Mycenae, the Great Palace burns. The famous Lion Gate stands, but everything behind it is ash. The linear B writing system disappears overnight. Greece enters what historians call the Greek Dark Ages. For 400 years, there is no writing, no trade, no monumental building. Civilization collapses to village level. In Anatolia, The Hittite capital of Hattusa is abandoned and burned. The Hittite language disappears. The empire that had matched Egypt vanishes completely. In Cyprus, city after city is destroyed. Enkomi, Kition, Sinda, all burned within decades of each other. The island's population drops by over 80%. Even mighty Egypt is struck. Ramesses III records a massive invasion of people he calls the Sea Peoples, waves of them, coming by land and sea simultaneously. Egypt repels them, just. But the effort breaks Egypt. Within decades, Egypt loses control of Canaan, its richest province. The new kingdom slowly dies. Chapter 3: The Sea Peoples Mystery. The Sea Peoples, the most mysterious invaders in all of ancient history. Who were they? Where did they come from? And why did they appear from nowhere? Ramesses III records them on the walls of his temple at Medinet Habu. He describes them as unstoppable, coming in waves, destroying everything in their path. He names them the Peliset, the Cheker, the Shekelesh, the Danayan, the Weshesh. Different groups, different origins, all attacking at the same time. Some scholars believe the Peliset became the Philistines of the Bible. Others believe the Danayan were the Danayans, Homer's Greeks. Nobody agrees on anything. What we know is this: they came with their families. Women, children, cattle, all moving together. This was not a raid. This was a migration of desperate people. But where did they come from? Some historians say the Aegean. Others say Anatolia. Some say they were the refugees of already collapsed Bronze Age civilizations. This creates a disturbing possibility. What if the Sea Peoples were not the cause of the collapse, but the result? Refugees from earlier destructions, moving desperately south and east. A domino effect of collapse. One civilization falls. Its survivors displace another. That civilization falls. Its survivors attack the next, until the entire system shatters. It is a theory that fits the evidence perfectly, and it is one of the most chilling explanations in all of ancient history, because it requires no single villain. Chapter 4: The Climate Catastrophe Theory. In 2022, a landmark study changed how we understand the Bronze Age collapse entirely. Scientists analyzed ancient pollen samples from lake beds across the eastern Mediterranean. What they found was devastating. Starting around 1200 BC, a severe and prolonged drought hit the entire region. Rainfall dropped dramatically for decades at a time. Harvests failed. Rivers shrank. The massive grain surpluses that Bronze Age palace economies depended on disappeared. Famine spread from Egypt to Anatolia. The Hittite king himself wrote desperate letters to Egypt begging for grain shipments. "It is a matter of life and death," he writes. The grain never arrived in time. Without food surpluses, palace economies cannot function. Soldiers cannot be paid. Trade cannot be financed. The entire system, built on abundance, collapses when scarcity arrives. But drought alone does not explain everything. Droughts had occurred before without destroying civilizations. Something made this one different. Something made the system unable to adapt. That something was complexity itself. The Bronze Age trading network was so interconnected that when one part failed, it pulled everything else down with it. Tin for bronze came only from Afghanistan. When supply routes broke, no one could make weapons or tools. When weapons disappeared, defense collapsed. When defense collapsed, cities burned. Chapter 5: The Systems Collapse Theory. Modern historian Eric Klein calls it a perfect storm. Not one cause, not two, but multiple simultaneous catastrophes hitting an already fragile, overcomplex system. Think of it this way. Bronze Age civilization was like a house of cards. Each card supports others. Remove enough cards simultaneously, and the entire structure falls at once. The triggers were drought, famine, internal rebellions, disrupted trade, earthquakes along fault lines, and waves of displaced migrating peoples, all arriving together in a 50-year window. No single palace could respond to all of these simultaneously. No single king had the resources. No single army could fight drought, famine, and invasion at the same moment. Earthquakes struck at least 5 major Late Bronze Age cities during this period: Mycenae, Tiryns, Ugarit, Megiddo, and others. Not just one earthquake, a cluster of them across decades. Internal rebellions followed food shortages. The lower classes, who had always supported the palace system, revolted when the palaces could no longer feed or protect them. Trade networks collapsed as cities burned and merchants stopped sailing. Without trade, the raw materials for bronze disappeared. Without bronze, armies weakened. The cycle accelerated downward. It is the first documented example in human history of what modern scientists call a cascading systems failure. A collapse so total, it resets civilization to zero. Cycle 6. Voices from the edge of the world. Some of the most haunting evidence of the Bronze Age collapse comes not from archaeology, but from the last letters of dying cities. Written words on the edge of extinction. From Alarshia, ancient Cyprus, a desperate message to Ugarit. The enemy ships have come. They have burned our villages. Do whatever you can to save yourself. Ugarit's own king was away fighting elsewhere. His officials wrote back, "There are no ships here. We have nothing to send. May the gods protect you." Then Ugarit itself fell. The letter in the kiln, the one that was never sent, was found 32 centuries later, still sealed, still unread, still urgent. From Egypt, Rameses III describes the chaos with epic language. No land could stand before them. They came with fire prepared before them, advancing toward Egypt. He defeats them. He builds temples celebrating his victory. But even in his victory inscriptions, something feels desperate, like a man celebrating survival, not triumph. Within decades of Rameses III, Egypt never again projects power into the Levant. The last great pharaoh of the new kingdom has saved Egypt, but cannot save the world. These letters and inscriptions are not just history. They are voices, real human beings, terrified, writing in the dark, not knowing if anyone would ever read their words. Chapter 7. What came after the darkness? The centuries that follow the collapse are called the Dark Ages, not because they were evil, but because the light of literacy, trade, and monumental culture simply went out. In Greece, the population drops by up to 75%. Villages replace palaces. Oral tradition replaces writing. Homer's epics preserve, in story form, the memory of what was lost. The Iliad and the Odyssey are not just poems. They are the cultural memory of a civilization that collapsed, passed down through generations of people who could no longer read or write. In Anatolia, the Hittite Empire is replaced by small Neo-Hittite kingdoms, a shadow of what once was. The great language and its cuneiform script disappear entirely. In Canaan, the power vacuum left by Egypt and the Hittites creates the conditions for new peoples to emerge, including, according to the Bible, the early Israelite kingdoms. In Phoenicia, some cities survive by adapting, becoming maritime trading cultures rather than palace empires. From their adaptation comes the Phoenician alphabet, ancestor of every alphabet used today. The Phoenician alphabet spreads to Greece. Greece creates democracy. Greece creates philosophy. From the ashes of the Bronze Age collapse, Western civilization is eventually born. It takes roughly 400 years, 4 centuries of darkness, forgetting, and slow rebuilding, before something new and extraordinary emerges from the ruins of what was lost. Chapter 8. New Discoveries. Rewriting the story. In recent years, archaeology has dramatically accelerated our understanding of the Bronze Age collapse. New sites, new technology, new answers, and new mysteries. LiDAR imaging, laser scanning from aircraft, is revealing Bronze Age settlement patterns invisible to ground-level archaeology. Entire landscapes of lost villages are emerging from beneath millennia of soil. DNA analysis of ancient skeletons from collapse-era sites is revealing massive population movements, people who should not be there, migrations that history never recorded. Isotope analysis of Bronze Age shipwrecks, like the famous Uluburun wreck found off Turkey, reveals trade networks of staggering complexity. Goods from 11 different cultures on one single ship. The Uluburun ship, dated to around 1300 BC, carried copper ingots, tin ingots, Canaanite jars, Egyptian gold, Baltic amber, and Cypriot pottery, all on one vessel simultaneously. This is the world that was lost, a world of breathtaking interconnection, where a single merchant ship carried the products of a dozen civilizations across open water. New climate data from stalagmites, cave formations that record ancient rainfall, confirms the drought was real, severe, and precisely timed to the collapse window of 1200 to 1150 BC. Earthquake geology is confirming a cluster of seismic events along the Dead Sea Transform fault system during exactly this period. The Earth itself was shaking the Bronze Age apart. Chapter 9. The warning for our world. Here is the question that modern historians and scientists are now asking openly. Is the Bronze Age collapse a warning? Does it tell us something about our own civilization? Consider the parallels. We live in the most interconnected civilization in human history. Global supply chains, digital networks, financial systems where every bank depends on every other bank. Our world, like theirs, runs on complexity. And complexity, as the Bronze Age teaches us, is both the source of civilization's greatest achievements and its greatest vulnerability. Climate disruption, food system stress, political instability, mass migration. These are not hypothetical future threats. These are the headlines of our world. Right now, today, the Bronze Age civilizations were not primitive. They were sophisticated, wealthy, educated, powerful. They had survived wars and droughts before, and they still collapsed completely. What they lacked was not intelligence or resources. What they lacked was the ability to cooperate across civilizational boundaries when the crisis became global rather than local. Each palace tried to save itself. Each king wrote desperate letters asking for help. Nobody came. Nobody could afford to. And so they all fell, one after another, alone. The Bronze Age collapse is not a story about ancient people in a distant time. It is a story about what happens when a complex, interconnected world cannot adapt fast enough to cascading crisis. Chapter 10. Conclusion. What the silence tells us. 3,000 years after the last palace burned, we are still finding their letters, still reading their desperate final words, still trying to understand what went wrong. The great irony of the Bronze Age collapse is this: from its ashes came everything we consider the foundation of Western civilization, philosophy, alphabet, democracy, religion, all born in the darkness after. Perhaps collapse is not the end of civilization. Perhaps it is simply its most brutal and most honest teacher. The moment when what was unnecessary is stripped away and only what is essential survives. What do you think caused the Bronze Age collapse? Was it climate? Invasion? Systems failure? Or something we still have not discovered? Tell us in the comments below.